Hello and warm welcome to SAP on Azure YouTube channel. Today is March 6th. We have 182nd episode. Warmly welcome to today's session with Robert and Holger, and we are here to talk everything and anything about SAP and Microsoft. So we have an old guest, Jitendra Singh, my good friend and colleague. And it's a very interesting topic, and we have really updated news on something called, goes under the umbrella of SAP Center for SAP, Azure Center for SAP Solution Tools and Frameworks. And he's working on a product called Inventory Checks. And there are some really interesting news and updates compared to the previous time when he was there. So before we start, JT, as we call you internally, can you please introduce yourself to the folks that maybe do not know about you?
Sure. So thank you very much for having me here. So my name is Jitendra Singh. I'm working as part of our core engineering group, working as a principal program manager, and I work with our key customers on their migration journey to Azure Cloud. So first of all, I'm privileged to be here. This is my second time on this podcast. This is one of the best postcard for everything SAP. So thank you very much for having me again, Goran.
Absolutely. I mean, we do everything to help customers, and spread the good news, on the tools that can help. So, I mean, you just recently basically published the blog. Also with the updates and in the news on SAP on Microsoft dedicated blog page. I loved actually tell us a little bit more about, I mean, for the folks that maybe again first time hear about this inventory check, what is this all about, how it fits to the ACSS, and then of course what's the update, so to say, what's the new.
No, that's great. So thank you very much again. So before we start talking about inventory checks for SAP, I will quickly give a bit background of the initiative that we started working. So a few years back, I will say, our team is really working with our customers day in and day out on their critical migration journey to Azure. So what we identified is like there might be some areas where we can bring additional tools and frameworks to fill the gap, because innovation is like happening every day. So of course, there will always be areas where we need to bring something to the market quickly, and product takes its own cycle. So that's the initiative we started with a name called Tools and Frameworks. Now, the intention of Tools and Framework was really twofold. One is to bring the ACSS assessments. Now, the objective of assessment was really to help customer with the design principle. So as we understand, customer business is going to look for options when they start their cloud journey. And once they commit to Azure, they really need to also understand what are the best practices available. So there is always a designing phase that goes in before they actually start deploying anything on Azure platform. So that's where assessment was really focused on. So we have three different assessments. One is our landing zone accelerator for SAP. Then there's a deployment checklist, which basically helps the program manager to make sure they are connected with the latest and greatest best practices that we keep on publishing. And the third assessment is really WAF, which is our well-architected framework for SAP assessment, which is basically more of an ongoing continuous assessment, because like once the SAP workloads are running on Azure, every quarterly, we generally recommend our customers to reassess, because there will always be scope to improve their reliability, security, against those 5 key pillars. So that's the first part, assessment, which is more of a design principle. The second part was health check. Now we can have the best design possible on the paper, but what happens if a partner or our customers or any technical team while deploying face some challenges and then start making some of the adjustments to make it move forward, because many times we see migration timelines are a bit tight. So there are chances that technical team will start deviating from the design that was agreed as part of our landing zone accelerator or design principle discussion. So that's where health check is coming in. Now, health check is really connecting to the resource and giving customer partner visibility of what is really deployed, right? So it's not about agreeing on the paper, but it is also about what to check, like what is actually deployed on the platform. So I will quickly bring this amazing journey that we captured from a tools and framework perspective, which is like when customer commits to Azure, they should always start with landing zone accelerator. That covers 8 critical design areas like subscriptions, networking, management, BCDR, all sorts of things. And that's really going to give you an output of a reference architecture that customer wants to deploy. And then they can use our deployment checklist to understand like what are the best practices. And then once the deployment is done, they can start using inventory checks for SAP and then quality checks and then go live basically. Once they are live, they can also come back and do the WAF assessment to understand what is the roadmap, where they want to go in 3 months, 6 months, right?
So basically the ACSS tool and framework supports the whole life cycle of not just the migration, but also the operational part and the innovation, which is happening continuously, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah. So today what we are going to focus is like on inventory checks for SAP. And as you said, there are some key updates that we published, and we also made it kind of a generally available now. So let's directly go to the Azure portal, and I will quickly show you like how things look like. So on the Azure portal, when you have access to the portal, the minimum requirement to access this workbook is you must have at least read-only access to the subscription where your deployment exists. Now, once you connect to Azure portal, you can simply go to our Insights Hub. And under Insights Hub, we have a section for workloads, and that's where our inventory checks for SAP lives. Now, this is based on workbook. So it makes use of Azure Resource Graph queries and matrix to collect some of the information. Now, the first version of the release was really focusing on the Azure Resource Group perspective. Now, let's take one example. So in this case, like customer will be interested in saying, okay, like we'll select the subscription where SAP systems are deployed. As soon as you select the subscription, the queries will be executed in the background. Now, what it is really doing is it's pulling the information in a real time. So you will be able to immediately see, okay, how many VM SKUs are deployed, how many managed disks are there, and if they have ANF storage overview or application gateway, load balancer, storage account. So it's able to pull a lot of information, right? And it's purely based on the selection that customer is going to do. So if I have a lot of queries, a lot of access to a subscription. So if I change the subscription, it will basically update the queries. And now you can see like I have access to more ANF storage accounts and then application gateway and different types of load balancer. So this is the first key part of our inventory checks for SAP, where we want to give a quick visibility to customers saying, hey, this is like what you have deployed within the selected subscription. Now, we understand that viewing is great for management perspective, but then customers also want to have something that they can download and consume offline. So that's where we are also pulling the same information when customer clicks on Azure Resources by list. Now it's a good view. Quickly, it's basically list out how many total VMs, managed storage accounts they have. And then customer can also use our text filtering, where if customer is interested to understand how many M series they have deployed in the selected subscription, they can quickly view it. So now it's very easy for customers to say, okay, they have one MV3 deployed, a couple of MV2s and MV1s as well. And the advantage of this is real time, right? In past, like customers used to do a lot of POC, and sandbox deployment, and then they will expect our technical team to delete it. And if there's a delay, like everything was on email, right? And then of course, CMDB and those kind of tools were also in use. So what this is going to give them is like immediate visibility of what is actually deployed in the subscription. So it's real time. And then they can download the data into Excel, which is an offline record. So it's a point in time as well if they really like to assess or go through or follow up on the email. Similarly, like we have a lot of other areas that we cover as part of inventory checks for SAP, which is virtual machine, storage, network, orphan resources, configuration checks, and monitoring. So now this view is really focused from a resource group perspective, right? And customer can simply select the resource group that they are interested in, and that way they will be able to limit to what they want to assess. So for example, ECC or BW, if they are like working on that product, they can simply select the resource group where that component is deployed. And then they will be able to see like how many virtual machines are there total, how many are deallocated, stopped. So there are very important information that we are pulling here. So in this example, like there are 3 virtual machines that are stopped, right? That basically, as we know, if it is not deallocated, you're still paying for it. So it's a good information to have, as well as there are 280 virtual machines deallocated. So, do we really need it? Otherwise, you can just back up and delete it. So there are like a lot of ways you can consume this information. And it also talks about VMOS licenses. Now, because this is all query based, we are reading information from our platform. Now, what we have done is we have created a logic within our query. So when we are showcasing this information, we are highlighting some of the tick boxes. So you can see like there are some tick boxes, there is some I, right? And then we are looking for boot diagnostics. Now, for an example for boot diagnostics, now customer can choose whether they want to enable boot diagnostics or not as part of VM deployment. Generally, it is recommended, but then it can be a way for them to basically quickly assess to say, am I doing it consistently, right? Because if they expect boot diagnostics to be enabled, then they can simply filter and say, okay, there are some virtual machines where boot diagnostics is not enabled, right? So that's one of the information. Also, there can be areas where customers not sure like why we are highlighting these information. So they are like, they can simply go to show help. And then if they click on show help, it basically pulls a lot of other information, right? And then there are some links to Microsoft documentation that they can review. Similarly, we have Compute Plus OS. Now in this, what we are really focusing is like whether customer is using any standard disk as part of their OS disk. Now using standard disk is not a problem, but then what we are trying to highlight from here is like it is going to impact their single VMSL. As we know, when you're using premium disk only, your single VMSL is 19.9. But if you are going to use any disk that's standard on the virtual machine, then your single VMSL will drop to 19.5. So those are the information, and like we can go through each and every tab, but that's what we are bringing here, right? So there's a lot of resources related information, and then storage account, whether customer is following the best practices around minimum TLS version, whether storage account got public access or not, whether HTTPS only is allowed or not. So all those information is available here. We have also added recovery service vault information where customer can see whether the recovery service vault is GRS or not, right? And whether cross-region restore is like enabled or not, right? So those are the like some of the key areas that we have started focusing based on our customers' feedback, because we are continuously working with our customers and partners, and we have received some of the amazing feedbacks from them, which we are basically incorporating into our inventory checks for SAP. On the similar line, we also had like a couple of customers who are really interested for us to pull some of the Azure NetApp file information. And that's where if you go into our configuration checks, you will see we are able to pull some of the ANF related information, where if you click on ANF resources, it's going to really give you a good view of like how many capacity pools are there and what's the allocation, right? How much you have really consumed, what is the total snapshot that's like consuming your volume storage, as well as how much you have provisioned in terms of throughput and allocated. So this is going to help you to understand, are you using your pool in the right way, or is there an opportunity for optimize? Similarly, we have also added a lot of information about volume usage. So that was one of the concerns that customers were having, saying like, hey, we need to have a bit more monitoring when it comes to volume consumption. So we have brought in here. So as you can see, like we are basically pulling at like what is the used percentage, and then it gives a lot of information as well. And the key matrix is also throughput limit reached. Now this basically indicate whether the volume itself has hit the limit in terms of throughput. And if it has hit, then like you don't want to make any changes with the throughput you have assigned.
And I'm just thinking actually also if you would use just the Azure portal information, they're not so nicely presented, and sorted. So here you have, let's say, on one place, because sometimes you would really have a snapshot of the all ANF accounts and volume and where you are. Definitely, I mean, it is very helpful, and this also information about the configure throughput I mean, you always dig it left and right and click it in order to pull it out, so to say. So it's very nice, definitely overview for the customer.
That's great. Thank you, Karan. And like one of my customer recently asked me to basically give them a graphical view here, so that like when you select a time range, so in 12 hours, how many times throughput hit, right? So that is coming with the latest update. So, so they are like, what I'm trying to indicate is like we are continuously working with our customers, taking our feedback, and then updating these workbook.
What is this monitoring part? For example, you have enough monitoring tab in the middle. Yes, there.
Yeah. So this is like basically we are pulling the metric information for ENF. Now, what you can do is like you might have some specific volumes where like you want to understand like how much IOPS throughput consume. The same information that we are pulling in other tabs, it's more of a graphical view, right?
Okay,
so if you have any specific volumes that you're interested, you can basically select them. And then what it does is like it basically pulls the information about consumption, then how many ENF specific capacity pool overview, and some IOPS and throughput and CRR replication as well.
Yeah.
Right, because some of our customers are really interested in seeing some graphical view as well, right? Because when they're going live, they are keen to understand like, okay, what's my consumption looks like in other areas. Now, what we have done, or the major update that we pushed now is really, as you know, like we released one of our native product, Azure Center for SAP Solutions, for our SAP customers. Now, if customers want to consume this workbook for SAP specific view, then there's a prerequisite that they need to go and register their SAP system to ACSS, which is Azure Center for SAP Solution. Now, once they have registered their system to ACSS, they can come back to the workbook, and then they can simply click on resource filter as VIS, which stands for Virtual Instance for SAP. Now, as soon as customer selects VIS, we change the view and we replace some of the tabs. Now we are trying to focus more specific on SAP deployment. Now here customer can see like how many SAP systems they have deployed, how many prod, how many non-prod, how many application instances, how many database instances and central instances, as well as we are able to provide some of the technical view on the WAF, right? Now, these are more of a configuration areas where they need to improve, right? Now we are trying to highlight, this is more of an overview to say like, okay, there are 168 operational excellence areas where customer can improve. There are 45 performance wise and 12 viability. So this is more of a overview of like their deployment, and they can also see per region and other stuff. Now, what we are also pulling, or what we are trying to indicate to our customers is like once the deployment is completed, now they can also filter with the SID that they are interested in. So if they're working on ECC Go Live, they can just filter on ECC. But they can also view all the system in one view, and they can also review the kernel, right? So we have seen like, during the migration, there can be a lot of changes happening. So there can be areas where like some of the patches were overlooked. So this is going to give you a good view where a customer can simply see, okay, I have like 789, right, kernel. But then there are like 2 different patches I'm using in my solution. So why there are like some systems on patch 52, some on patch 100. There can be a valid reason why, but it's just a quick view for customer rather than asking basis team to say, hey, can you send me this information? They can simply go to the portal, do a quick review. So that's going to help really during the tight timeline when you are working on the go live part.
Yeah, basically, when I think so far you had an infrastructure information without the SAP context, and by ability to pull the information from ACSS, you are able to really enrich it with the SAP context, right? And put it also in a much easier consumable way. That's a big step forward. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the intention. And the reason why we have invested in Azure Workbook or this standalone workbook is it also gives our customers ability to customize it, right? So now they can see like what views we are presenting, but they might have their own preference, how they want to consume this information. So this really gives them access to, you can simply go into customize and see what queries we are executing, and then they can make some changes to the queries and get the information that they are looking for, right? Rather than building from the scratch. So the WAF that we were trying to indicate, everything is also available here. So all this like accelerated networking and everything like we are detecting based on like ACSS information, that is also available directly here. And they can simply filter to some of their systems that they believe is key, or when they are working on the go live and other stuff. And it's very easy to basically say, okay, I'm more interested in those two systems. Show me, do I have any configuration checks? So there are nothing to highlight. So that's how like, you will be able to quickly filter to the right information. And then like other stuff remains same. So the other part of the platform is still available when you're looking from SAP perspective. Now what we're doing is like we're filtering the platform view with the SID as a filter. So for these two SIDs, we have only two virtual machines running, and these are the license tabs. And run similarly, like all the information that we reviewed earlier is basically going to come, but with a filter with SAP view, as you said, right? It's more of a SAP centric view that we are pulling in. What we have added recently is also monitoring and services, where customer can basically see some of the key areas about like, okay, how many virtual machines are up and running or not, and then some of the key metrics that we always look for, like CPU, read, write, and all. And then Azure Resource Health, as you know, like is my virtual machine up and running, and like if not, why it is not up and running. So you can get that kind of information. And of course, like you can also filter for one specific like DB node where you are trying to troubleshoot. It's very easy or handy to get that information. We have also added compute change analysis, where like we will try to understand like, is there any change happened to the compute, right? So here, like you can see like customer made some changes to the disk and other stuff, right? So it's really that information, getting access to the customer without spending time in going to different places. Just log into Azure portal, filter to the right SID, and get the right information. So these are the main updates that we have published this time. We are also working with our customers and partners to gain what else they want to look into, and then we will be updating with the new version in coming weeks.
I think if you go to the VIS Compute, there were also some kind of warnings about exactly the disk skew, for example, which I find it quite interesting. So maybe you can a bit highlight. It's I believe an operating system disk, if I'm not wrong.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
So when we go into compute, basically like we are covering compute overview, compute list, compute OS disk is like, okay, what kind of OS disk customer is using, right? So here, like what we are saying is like, this is a Linux virtual machine where customer is using compute disk of 64 GB, but the disk skew is standard. Now the warning is really indicating this SAP system is running on a virtual machine where standard disk is attached. That means your single VM SLA will be impacted. Because of standard disk, it will go down to 19.5.
So basically they need a premium disk, premium OS disk in order to have that higher single VM SLA, right?
That is correct. That is correct. So our intention is like we are sharing this information. Now customer is going to sit and decide whether they want to like take the risk and live with a lower SLA, or they can basically look into and start making changes to premium SSD based on the criticality of the SAP system, right? Also, we are trying to highlight this caching, although we are not like putting the warning sign. That should come in the next version, where we will be recommending customers to use read write. But if they're not using it, we will just indicate as an information, and then we highly recommend customers to review, because in general, we expect customers to use read write on the OS disk, right?
Yeah. So do you, I mean, I know you are continuously improving, you are getting the feedback. Can you disclose anything which is planned for the future, for the next stuff, or maybe how customer can contact you with if they have some specific requirement? Of course, everything is driven by the customer needs, right?
Yeah. So one of the best place will be our tech community, where we have published our blog. So we have welcome our customers and partners to provide the input directly from the blog as a feedback, or they can reach out to their Microsoft contact, right? CSAM or CSAs they are working with, and then they will be able to reach out to us, right? Like Goran, like we are part of the same team. We are like customer solutions engineering team. So we have like different partners within the organization who are working directly with customer. So we will encourage our customers, if they are not already working with us, they can reach out to CSAM or the Microsoft contact they are working with, and then provide the feedback, and that should come to us.
Great, great. No, I really, and one important part just came to my mind. As far as I remember, there are no agents that anybody, anything has to install it or deploy it, right?
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing I might have missed to say. If you want to consume this information, you don't have to do anything. You just need a read-only access, right? No, funny agents or any other configuration you have to do with your subscription. When you want to see the SAP view, that's the only place you need to register your SAP system, because we need to deploy some of the extensions. But to just use our inventory checks for SAP workbook at subscription level, no prerequisites. Just have a read access, and then you can start consuming it.
And this is great because it simplifies onboarding and simplifies any kind of security discussion will always take the place. That's clear. I mean, of course, a customer will always have, but because it's just read only, it's no big deal, so to say. Yeah. So which is really a great advantage and simplifies the overall onboarding and overall experience is really nice. It's much easier. Yeah, great. Anything else, JT, you want to mention?
Yeah, so we are working on like a few more enhancement. As I mentioned, like one was on the Azure NetApp files, where like if volume is hitting throughput, we will show a graph where customer can see, okay, in last 12 hours, I hit threshold 5 times, 6 times. That's one of the area. Then we are also trying to summarize it in a bit, right? Because in past we have like received some feedback saying like there are too many tabs on this workbook to go through, which is always good for technical people. But then management also wants to have a single view. So what we did is like for now, we have option for report, which you can say yes, and then it removes all the tabs and then gives you a single page view of the information. So you don't have to click on multiple tabs. What we're trying to do is like we're trying to also create a single page view. So those are the updates we are working on in parallel, where like somehow we are trying to figure out if we can also make it a regular report that customer can get in their email, but that's part of the next phase plan.
Great. No, sounds good. I mean, it also sounds that you will come again with another updates. No, great stuff. I love. I'm personally more visual type, so I always love to see a kind of bird view and being able to drill it down as well. Definitely, I know some of the customers are using it and having a value. I mean, community is highly encouraged to try it. And of course, as you mentioned, for anything, if they think there is any need additional, exactly, yes, please show the blog. This, which is just basically recently kind of published. They can leave the comment there, or through other channels also in the Microsoft as well, contact with the demand. Exactly. So this is just recently week ago or so you publish.
And you can see like there are some feedbacks from our customer, and Microsoft team also uses it, right? So we have like great feedbacks, and like it goes step by step, like different ways to consume the workbook via ACSS or standalone. Or like you can also use our GitHub version where like you can customize and position it, right? So we highly recommend customers to view it.
Great, super. JT, thanks a lot for coming. Really, I mean, very useful stuff for the customer. I'm pretty sure many would use it and have the benefit, which will help them in every day-to-day operational and migration part. And I mean, looking forward for the next features and updates that are coming.
Yeah, and Goran, like we are also excited, and we work hard to come back to your podcast, right? Because it's a great platform, and thank you very much for running these episodes, because this is the best way to connect with our partner and community as well, right? Because it's the best way to consume, and then you are allowed to do some demos as well. So thank you.
Yeah, super. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
See you. Bye-bye.